Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. Today, we have a special guest. We've got Neil Sahota, who is going to be talking to us about how to understand and reposition artificial intelligence for social good. Neil is the author of Own the A.I. Revolution. His podcast is titled The Future with Neil Sahota and can be found on Apple Podcast. Neil is also a professor at UC Irvine and a global recognized speaker and author. Neil is the founding member of the UN's AI for Social Good Committee, and he's here to talk about the ways we can harness the power of AI and use it for social good. Neil's book provides a future-forward look at AI, focusing on how businesses can use it to commercialize while doing good in the world. Okay, Neil, well, I'm excited to have you on. Before we get in with the kind of the deep questions, why don't you tell us your backstory, how you got into AI, and what brought you to this place today?
Well, I could probably sum it up in one word: accident. I never planned any of this.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been one of those guys that, when I'm trying to solve a problem, rather than just solve the specific problem, try to do it more generally.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, I've developed a lot of intellectual property. And about 14 years ago, business intelligence was really taking off, with the ability to, get all this data and slice it up, get these great reports. A lot of people were saying, like, it's really cool. The machine is giving us these great insights. I started thinking to myself, the machine really isn't telling us anything when we're doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
but could a machine actually do that? And so I wound up developing a series of patents around something I call enterprise intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
which now we would call it like machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first foray into AI. I was working for IBM at the time, trying to turn to a product when there was a little project going on called Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to get involved in that and actually helping to build out IBM Watson and, more importantly, the ecosystem around it, giving people the tools to use the technology.
Mm-hmm. So for someone like me who knows almost nothing about AI, what is the proper definition? And is that different? Is AI different than machine learning, or are they one and the same?
It's a good question and a complicated one.
Uh-huh.
The definition of AI is a bit of a moving target. As we advance, our expectations are changing. But simply put, AI is really a machine that kind of mimics human thinking, that it uses its experience, its knowledge to try and figure out, an answer or a solution to something we may not have the answer to. So it can do kind of low level admin tasks that require some level of cognition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, machine learning is definitely part of AI. I mean, machine learning is the machine actually learns by doing. You give a lot of data, that's the fuel. And it tries to determine patterns and kind of wires itself. So much like if you took a child to the library and asked the kid to read a bunch of books, the kid would start learning things from the books. Mm-hmm. Right? But just like the child's going to need some structure and guidance, so does the machine. Mm-hmm. And so as the machine is learning, we will have it work with human experts so that it can actually focus its learning, say, in a proper fashion, meaning that it's not making wild assumptions or it's misinterpreting information. So machine learning is a key part of that. The other key part when it comes to AI is the ability to actually understand natural language, which is something we as people really take for granted. If I told everyone out there, hey, I'm feeling blue because it's raining cats and dogs, well, most people know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But if I told that to a machine, what does the machine actually think, right? It's going to say that Neil is physically the color blue because small animals are falling from the sky? That doesn't compute. Mm-hmm. So with AI, it's not looking at keywords. It's not looking at like literal meaning. It's trying to understand context of the conversation. It's trying to understand slang, idiom, jargon. So it's trying to get the intent of what I'm trying to say, not just, the literal definition.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just literal language, it's intent. How do you build a machine that can do that? Can maybe read body language? What kind of sensors do you need in a machine to be able to sense things more than just words?
So that's a really good point, Josh. We all have cameras on all these devices now, so you can actually have that video fed into an AI and it can watch it in real time. but you still have to teach the AI kinesiology.
Mhm.
And there are people that have done that, like IBM Watson has learned from a guy that has developed like technology or actually said a system back in the 50s that could reveal if a person's lying. So like on your face, there's over 2,000 points alone that reveal a lie, right?
Mhm.
The best human can watch, 7 to 12 points in real time. The machine can watch all 2,000. And so if you can teach the machine those points, teach the machine what different gestures mean, like tapping your foot, crossing your arms, the machine will actually then understand and say, okay, as I'm talking with this person and I see their body language change, it means something. What does it mean? And it gets better with practice. So it's not perfect right off the box. It could take several iterations. It usually takes weeks to train an AI, but it never forgets what it's learned. So it gets better and better. And at some point, it reaches that confidence level where we're going, okay, it's right like 90% of the time.
So if we follow that application, police stations could actually have a little AI machine next to them while they're doing interrogations or interviews and be able to tell lie, truth,
They,
pretty
they,
confidently.
they could. I mean, and I know in law enforcement, there's a lot of talk about using the technology for that very reason as a lie detector.
Huh?
There's more of a concern on the legal side. Is that valid? Is it admissible? How would you contest that? So it's interesting. We know the technology is there. The comfort level among us as people, not quite there yet.
Huh? How about in the investing world? Because I hear about that in terms of machines making the investment choices instead of people who make choices based on emotion and instinct. Is there applications for that as well going on?
There are. I think a lot of the financial services companies are using the technology and not kind of revealing their hand because it's
Mm-hmm.
competitive advantage. But there's an ETF called AIEQ
Mm-hmm.
that the entire portfolio is actually decided by an AI they built.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to using like the standard metrics, right? They are trying to hopefully pull out some of the subjectivity out. But ironically, one thing they're trying to do is the AI measure the irrationality of people, if you will.
Uh-huh.
I know one of the fundamental tenets of the market is people are rational, but I think we'll all agree we're not quite so rational all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So AI is trying to anticipate like investor sentiment. So like when people are they going to be happy, are they going to be sad, are they going to be afraid? Certain news were to come out, what will be happen, and try and factor that irrational factor into its portfolio decision making. So
Hmm.
I've always believed you can't predict the stock market because how do you predict the irrationality of people?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like these guys may have built an AI that can actually do that.
Hmm. Wow. So I'll have to check that stock out to see how it's doing, or that fund. So in the case of the business world, part of your history has to do with social good and being involved with the UN. How does the intersection of AI and social good, what how does that mesh?
Well, AI, like all technology, is a tool, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
about how we use it. We can use it to create, we can use it to destroy, and I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for social enterprise, social entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
where we can do, make money and do good at the same time. And the UN has 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, like
Mm-hmm.
zero hunger, improve gender equality, better access to healthcare, and they want to make these goals a reality by 2035.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there's a bit of a shortfall in making that a reality. The conservative estimate is about $7 trillion a year. The high end is like 20 trillion a year, and having resources and things to actually make this to actually do these by 2035.
Mm-hmm.
Technology we're finding can be a bridge to cover some of that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've already started up through AI for Good 116 projects. We're using the technology to help make the SDGs a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Africa, there's about one doctor for every 2,000 people. And you may not be close. You might be like 60, 70 kilometers away from a doctor or hospital.
Mm-hmm.
How do you improve care in those rural areas?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like one of the things that's being worked on is like self-contained tablet with an AI on it that knows some basic like first aid and healthcare, so that a villager could take this tablet if someone gets injured or someone falls ill. You use the tablet, ask questions, use the camera to help diagnose, and then the AI can help prompt, okay, this is probably what's going on, and here's a treatment. Or if it's really serious, say, hey, we have to alert somebody, get this person, helicopter to the nearest hospital. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially trying to enable, for people that are not medical experts to be able to provide some level of basic care.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. So bringing it down to just the average entrepreneur, what should they be? Should they be excited, or should they be concerned? Because obviously they might have 10 employees and they're running a hotel or have an online business where they're doing coaching like I am. Like, how is this going to affect their future in 10 years?
I think they should be excited, and for very good reason. Building up this AI ecosystem and getting people to use the tools and think. About 70% of that ecosystem is actually startups. It's entrepreneurs, and they're the ones actually coming in with the more great, innovative, or you prefer disruptive ideas. Mm-hmm. I think entrepreneurs, or even entrepreneurs, have the advantage of trying to look at things differently. The big companies, for example, they think very much automation. So they have their existing process or system, and they're saying, okay, can we make it faster, cheaper, less errors? But I see the entrepreneurs are coming in thinking like, well, I have this new tool set with AI. Can I create a new process, a new system, a new product? Mm-hmm. And they're really unlocking more of the value out of AI that way. They're the ones that are really, to be cliche, are changing the game.
So if I'm one of these entrepreneurs who wants to innovate with AI, should I buy? I mean, I don't even know where to begin. It's probably a bad question. Should I go buy some artificial intelligence stuff and play around with it and figure out the solutions? Or I mean, because the idea of changing global healthcare, that seems a bit big. But if I think, I want to help companies increase their employee satisfaction, is there like an off-the-shelf AI thing that I can start to play around with?
There are a lot of tools available by all the big companies that, they have nice demos and things like that. But if you're an entrepreneur figuring out how can I use AI, it starts like with everything else. Just think about a problem. I mean, what's a problem you want to solve? And don't worry so much about the technology itself. Think about kind of that pie in the sky ideal solution and see if there's an opportunity. And then, even if you're not a tech expert, and you don't have to be, partner up with somebody who say, do this capabilities exist? Mm-hmm. To give you a real simple example, there's a company called Own the A.I. They're a startup started by a therapist and a neurolinguist, and they wanted to help depressed and suicidal teens. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, is there a venue, these people need someone to talk to, some communication, someone that's not going to judge them. And so they're wondering like, well, we have all this AI stuff. Could we do something like that? Right. And so they start thinking about, if I were to build something, what would that be? Right. So not thinking about the technology so much, but what would that be? And then partnering up with some tech experts to say, I want to do this. Can AI help me? Mm-hmm. And then the experts come in and say, well, you can do these three things, but not this one thing. Or, there's actually this capability that might help you do something similar to this. But by fleshing all that out, they were actually able to build out that type of AI tool to help people, right? And it's actually expanded out in that it's not just a tool to help depressed and suicidal teens. It's actually like a communication tool. It actually help us all kind of engage better, understand how to speak the language that's going to resonate the best with other people.
So you mentioned that you're on the board of several companies, kind of helping them understand the future of AI and how it can apply. What kind of advice do you give them? Because I think most of us here aren't going to be able to afford you to be on our boards. So what kind of advice do you give them? Do you tell them certain books to read or certain research to be aware of? Or what kind of advice do you impart?
Well, first I tell them don't use AI for AI's sake. I know there's a lot of hype and all that, but you don't need to use AI for everything. Right. And, especially as entrepreneurs, we have to take advantage of the money and resources that we have as efficiently as possible. Right now, whether AI makes sense, great, we should definitely pursue it. And so I always encourage them that, one, there's a lot of great blogs and articles out there, like Cognitive World has some great information, especially for non-technical people.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I always tell them, like, look, you can't worry about what people are doing or not doing. There's a whole world of opportunity out there. AI is triggering what they call the fourth industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to change 90% of everything that we do professionally, personally. People are still trying to figure out what those possibilities are. And it's worth investing a little time to say, what are those possibilities? Think about that pain point that's, you've never been able to solve, or the opportunity, something you always wished you could do. It's worth exploring to see if AI can actually help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're unclear, there's a lot of these AI challenges and other things going on where, a little bit of crowdsourcing, they can actually help you figure out and say, does AI make sense to use here? Is it feasible?
Mm-hmm. Well, here, I'm going to ask you a question that I'm thinking about as we're talking here, just to solve my problem. And then I've got you for free. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, like thousands of them, right? We've had millions down our book. And so I get them at a point where they've hit a glass ceiling. Either they're running out of time, they're running out of money, maybe their strategy's bad, maybe they have a bad personal life, their business systems are bad. There's like hundreds of variables that have made them stop growth in their business. That growth might have stopped at $100,000 in revenue, $1 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue, but they've kind of plateaued. And I have a lot of inputs about what's, I would love to have a machine that can interview every single client I've worked with over the last decade and then come up with like, hey, this is what we've actually learned. There's 700 variables and these are the ones and here's the ratios and, and be able to tell me that in real time. So when I talk to someone, I'm like, okay, this is the trigger point for you before we can break through that plateau. And all I have is my experience with coaching so many clients. But I mean, would there be a tool that could do that? Maybe there's one off the shelf already that's created.
I don't know if there's one off the shelf, but you can do it. I won't sugarcoat it. It won't be easy. You have to have the data. Uh-huh. But it sounds like if you could go back and interview all your clients over the past 10 years, you definitely would have the data, right? You could have the AI sit there, listen, or even prompt questions to help flush out so you get, really good, robust data. But data is the fuel for AI. And I think that's a lot of things a lot of people don't understand. It's not just a magic box that I wanted to do this, it'll just be able to do it. Mm-hmm. We need data, we need training. And it sounds like, Josh, you probably have both, so you could probably do this.
This is kind of an interesting idea. Well, see, I thought you were going to be a boring interview. Now I'm excited. Well, that's pretty cool because this definitely is a challenge that people can't solve in real time themselves. But if there's a machine that's got, I think you made a good point, the data aspect. And humans very easily can get skewed by not enough data or looking at data incorrectly because of the emotional aspect. Yeah. And whereas a computer can sift through. How much data does a AI machine really need to start to learn? I mean, does it need like 1,000 inputs of data, or is it just after 10 it starts to kind of learn from that?
It depends on what you're trying to do and how much complexity or variability there is. Mm-hmm. Like if you're looking at something that's kind of very binary, it's either X or it's Y. Mm-hmm. You don't need that much data. You probably need more than 10, I'll call it 10 record sets, mm-hmm. but you probably could get away with 500. Now, if there's more outcomes or more variability, like, hey, 1,000 things can happen, you need a lot more data. Mm-hmm. Just to put it in perspective, Google's DeepMind's AlphaGo, the AI that beat the Go champion, mm-hmm. the way they trained it is they just gave it the rule book for the game. Mm-hmm. And that is what we call a ground truth. So it's rules on how to make decisions. Mm-hmm. Then they had it watch 10,000 hours of people playing the game. Mm-hmm. So they didn't say these are good players, good strategy, bad strategy, just watch that. Mm-hmm. And so it learned moves and other tactics by watching people play. Mm-hmm. And then they had to play itself 1 million times. So we call that reinforcement learning. Mm-hmm. That took about 1 week for AlphaGo to do, but that gave AlphaGo the opportunity to suddenly test out different strategies, different tactics, all these different things to really master the game. So in that regards, there wasn't actually 10,000 hours of video footage seems like a lot, and it is, but there's a lot of variability in how you play the game. But after that, it was ready to go and actually start playing against humans.
That's just, it's amazing. So, so for those of us who have a lot of employees, 10, 20, 30 years from now, our landscape could be very different based on either their interaction with the machine. They'll have like cyborg helmets on and feeding them information, or they'll actually just be machines entirely. That's pretty amazing. Now, I asked you before we even chatted today, and this is because this is just one of my clients, and I'm curious. He teaches people how to speak Spanish. I think people who speak English just to learn Spanish, and very successful. It's internet business, and so for him, he's mentioned AI before, and someday, like what are the how does he know when to cut and run, or what does the future look like? Because the technology might be there, like driving cars, but how long does it take till mass market actually accepts a machine as opposed to a human? Is there like a 10-year gap? Once the technology is there, then humans actually are willing to trust it? Or what's that time period?
No, I to be honest, I think that's the challenge that we have as people, is we think we have a much longer runway than we really do. The only constant in life is change. It's just that change is happening faster and faster. I think when it comes to AI, I don't think it's 10 years for a lot of stuff anymore. It might be 6, in some cases it might be 4 or less. But, language translation, for example, we're probably almost at the cusp of the change happening. There's a lot of tools out there. People already got like one-to-many translation. Like if I talk in English, there's actually some tools out there already where if your native language is French, you hear it in French. If that person speaks Japanese, they're hearing it in Japanese, and vice versa. So I think the adoption is going to be based on the trust of the technology, as well as, is it good enough yet? Okay. And I think we're not quite at good enough yet, but we probably will be in the next couple of years. It's very similar to self-driving cars. A lot of people I talk to think that's 10, 15 years away. Singapore has had self-driving self-driving buses and taxis for 2 years now. Wow. In fact, I know that Audi's been working with China. China has one of the most complex set of driving rules out there. They're going to achieve level 4 automation early next year, and most likely China will then certify self-driving cars to be on the streets. The California legislature is actually currently considering a bill right now to make self-driving vehicles legal on the highways, meaning you don't need to have a person behind the steering wheel. And Ford is going to release a car in 2021, no steering wheel, no brakes, no accelerator.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So what do we do? What can humans do better than machines?
A lot, actually. I know it always seems like that's not the case, but when it comes to like imagination, creativity, doing more really highly complex or things with a lot of variability, we are much better than machines. I mean, don't get me wrong. Machines can only do what we teach them. And if we don't have a way to kind of commoditize something and teach them that, they're not able to do it. And think, if you're going to teach someone to imagine different kinds of life, like silicon-based life, could you teach a machine that, right? That's more creation, that's more imaginative, it's more philosophical, if you will. So I think much like all technology, it's going to reduce the burden on some of the more low-level admin type of things, but free our time up to work on more complex work, more high-value work. Like I look at doctors, if you can help summarize the patient information and help categorize some of these things so that the doctor doesn't have to do so much paperwork, that will free up their time to actually spend more time talking with patients, right? Which we know is really important.
So we won't be seeing any AI philosophers anytime soon.
I don't think so, right? No. Somebody out there might prove me wrong in the future. I don't know if it'll be the near future, but probably in the future.
That'd be a good challenge. Well, cool. So what did I not ask you that I should ask you? I mean, you got a big, a lot of knowledge in this particular subject, but what do you think, you want to leave the audience with? I didn't ask you about.
there's a lot of fear and concern out there, right? And I totally get that, and some of it's definitely warranted. But I really just want to emphasize that this is a tool that we use. This is not Terminator time, right? There's a lot to be hopeful, but we just have to get in the mindset about the opportunity. That this is a chance to actually not just do more important work, but to, in fact probably make ourselves better. A lot of people ask me if AI, this is the century of the machine, and I actually believe it's the century of the human. Just a quick example, there's a project going on called Loving AI where they're trying to teach a machine unconditional love, because the largest illness is actually loneliness in the world. About 40% of people suffer from that, and they're wanting to create a companion. But the question became, in trying to teach the machine, well, what's unconditional love mean? What is love, and what are different forms of love, and why is unconditional love different than love? It's turned into this really deep, self-reflecting journey in what it means to be human. It's become a really deep exploration on us as people and why we might do things or not do things. And as a result of trying to codify this for a machine, it's really put us into a deeper touch with our own humanity. And I think that's a huge opportunity for all of us.
Wow. Well, very interesting. I'm sure we could mine that topic for a long time, but I know you've got to run, and so do I. So where can people find you if they want more information or they want to check out your book? Neil, where should they go?
They should go to my website, neilsahota.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting and sharing information, and please reach out if you have any questions or just want to wrap.
Okay, very good. All right, Neil, thanks for being such a great guest. And thank you for tuning in today to the Work System Podcast. Tune in next week. We're going to have another great guest like Neil sharing the future of business, how to improve your business, or maybe one of my past guests talking about how they systemize their company to make more and work less. Also, if you want to get a copy of that book right there behind you, Work the System, if you want it mailed to you, a free edition, then leave us a review. And we're pulling a name out of a hat once a week and mailing out a copy of that book. Just send us a picture or a screenshot to info@workthesystem.com, and we'll be mailing out one a week. Otherwise, I will catch you all next week. Thanks again, Neil.
My pleasure, Josh.